Hi all, how are you tonight? I am here in my living room. My name is Dr. Chris Sargent, and we are going to have some fun, and hopefully I can answer your questions about Hashimoto's and thyroid and some of the things that we talk about all the time on our group. And the questions that I answer the most, I figured it would be easier if I just created a video for it, and then you have an ongoing resource. And just so you know, I'm not that much different than all of you. I'm a single mom. I'm pretty busy. I run a busy practice, and I've fallen in love with this Facebook group. But I also, I'm going to turn this around. I also still have my Christmas decorations up. I took away the green things and added some hearts just to fake out my kids that it was actually. So that being said, I'm going to put this on a tripod, hopefully, so that I can use the whiteboard behind me when I need it, and I don't have to be distracted by the phone and the phone moving around and all that. So I have a little bit of an outline that I'd like to follow. I will do my best to follow the outline and try to pay attention to some of your questions as they pop up. And hopefully we'll have time to go through some of the questions, but maybe I will answer most of them throughout the presentation. So I want to start with the fact that our medical system is broken. And one of the questions that I answer the most, or one of the things that I hear the most and see the most and read the most, is that a lot of you are being completely dismissed by your doctor, and even to the point of being demeaned by your doctors when you ask for more labs, when you tell them you feel horrible and they tell you that your labs are fine. I get really angry about that. I spend an hour with most of my patients when they first come in so that I can really hear the story. And this is not about me. This is about the broken system. Our doctors can't do that. First of all, they're not trained to do that. And our system is not set up, or the medical system is not set up to take time with patients. You'd think that the system would be set up for us, but it's really set up to make a lot of money for the insurance companies and the conglomerates of healthcare that are out there now. It's not set up for us as patients. So when you go into your medical doctor, he has 3 to 5 minutes to find out what your main complaint is, and that's it, and give you a drug. And you know, he has 2 things when he opens his little black bag of tricks. He has a scalpel and a script, and that's all he was ever taught. And so to expect more is okay, but don't be disappointed if they don't have any other education, because they've never really been trained to do anything other than scripts and scalpels. That's what they know. So all of that to just help you understand that our medical system is pretty broken. And docs aren't trained in chronic disease either. They're trained really well if you have a heart attack. They're trained really well if you get hit by a bus, right? And your arm is flopping all over the place. That's a great system. Our system is perfect for that. If you have a stroke or anything super acute, if you're sick and you have pneumonia, our system is absolutely designed for those kind of illnesses. Our insurance company pays for that. They pay for all the testing around it. They pay for you to be in the hospital. They pay for you to get sewn back together and put back together. But what our system is not set up for is long-term lifestyle diseases. And I was just writing this earlier today about how we take symptoms like high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Those are symptoms in your body, that your body cannot handle the stressors that it's being put under. Those are symptoms. And we use drugs to push down the symptoms. So when we use those drugs to push down the symptoms, it's much like, let's use a car for an example. We all understand if we have a light blinking at us, right, on the dashboard of our car. Like the check engine light maybe, because that's one that everybody goes, oh crap, there's something really big wrong, right? So the check engine light is blinking. You take your car to your mechanic or your doctor, right? That's the symptom, right? You've got this blinking light. Hey, something's wrong, something's wrong. So you drive into your mechanic, and your mechanic opens the hood of the car, and he leans in with a pair of pliers and he clips the light, the wire to the light. You get back in your car, he goes, you won't find that light there anymore. You'll be fine, everything's good. You get back in your car, you're driving along, and guess what? That blinky, blinky light is gone, right? The symptom is gone. He gave it a pill, and the symptom is gone. Is the problem still in the engine? Yeah, it is. And that's how, when we try to take medication to treat chronic diseases in our body, the medication can only go so far and only do so much. And then our body has to be able to do what it's designed to do. So in terms of thyroid, when you take levothyroxine, that is a synthetic T4, some of our bodies are fine with that, right? Some of our bodies can absolutely take in that T4, convert it to T3, and we feel fabulous, right? Other people, that's just not it's not the same. So just understand that chronic disease is all that stuff that's going on like in the engine of your car. But if you're taking pills to cover it up, eventually something is going to erupt. So we will talk a little bit more about how broken the system is, but I want you to understand that when you go to your medical doctor and you're looking for something other than a prescription drug that they are familiar with, that their drug rep came and told them all about, if you're looking for something other than that, you're probably not going to find it. So try not to be too frustrated, but do be an advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself all the time. And if your doctor who works for you, he is your employee. So if your doctor isn't doing what you feel like you need done, then you need to change doctors. And I advocate that a lot. So the system's broken. We, on the functional medicine side, really think about wellness first. And eat, drink, move, sleep, and think is all part of that wellness model, not taught in medical schools at all. Nutrition is not taught in medical schools. If you want to ask your medical doctor about nutrition or about what you should be eating, he doesn't have much of an opinion and will probably just tell you it doesn't matter because he's never learned anything different. So that being said, what's up with this thyroid thing, right? That's why you're all here tonight, probably more than anything, is to learn about the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland is an H-shaped gland right at the base of your throat, right in this area. And the thyroid hormones, T4 and T3, are responsible for your metabolism. T3 is the active thyroid hormone. And this is really important to remember because you're being given T4 most of the time. So T3 has to go to every single cell in your body. Which cells? Every cell. Every cell needs T3 to just turn up the volume on the metabolism. So T3 is necessary to do that. Every single one needs T3. When you're given T4 and your body doesn't have what it needs or cannot convert it over to T3 for a multitude of reasons, which we'll talk about in a minute, you are going to still feel crappy even when your TSH and your T4 are normal. That's not enough laboratory to really understand what's going on with your thyroid. I understand that your insurance company probably won't pay for any more than that, and your doctor probably won't run any more than that until you can find somebody who will. That's why I said before, you must advocate for yourself in order to get what you're looking for and learn more about what you need. you may or may not find it at your doctor. And you know, I want to also have a little bit of a blanket statement. Some of you have great doctors, and that's awesome. But those who don't, and those who are disenfranchised and frustrated and sad about being told there's nothing wrong, that's not okay. So I'm going to just go back to that. So let's finish talking about your thyroid gland. Thyroid gland produces about 80% T4 and 20% T3. And T4 goes to your gut, your liver, and your kidneys and gets converted to T3. That is a nutrient-dependent action. Those actions require vitamin D, B-complex vitamins, selenium, zinc, vitamin A. And without those, you can't convert T4 to T3, and you will have a conversion issue, or what we call conversion issues. That's more, I see more conversion issues in my patients than anything else. That's probably the most common thing I see. And because I run all the labs, I see it. And it's a very tight ratio of T4 to T3. That free T4 at around 1 and that T3 over 3, free T3 over 3 is really what has to happen, or you're going to be miserable. Probably. Some people do better on different ratios, but that's the most common feel-good ratio. So I don't treat patients by their labs entirely. Some of what I do is I treat how are you feeling and what do the labs say and what's healthy for your body, because your body needs a certain amount of T3. You have to have that there or your body can't run the way it's supposed to. So hopefully that gives you some idea about what is happening in the thyroid and in the rest of the body. Now let's talk about how did you end up with Hashimoto's and how did you end up with a thyroid problem in the first place? Chronic disease, or any kind of disease, regardless of whether it's a thyroid issue or other hormone issue or leaky gut or like, let's see, what else do we treat? Like a lot of irritable bowel syndrome. All of that stuff is whatever stressors come into our body create the kind of health that we have. And those stressors for our body can start way back on our timeline. Functional medicine does a really nice job of timelining out your health events. They may have started when you weren't breastfed as a baby. Not that that's your mother's fault. It's just what happened. And that changes the flora in your belly. When your flora changes, your health changes. So that could be where things started. Maybe I have one patient who was actually exposed to the Chernobyl event in Russia. Way back when. Her mom was exposed. She was exposed as a little girl. Guess what? She had radiation poisoning. So that's a huge stressor on the body. So it doesn't have to be that big. But understand that illnesses, antibiotics, having children, yeah, I know, they're great, and wow, do they take a lot out of us. Having children, any hormonal disruptions, the birth control pill, other medications, all can cause our immune systems to get sick. So eat what we eat plays probably one of the biggest roles. It's the biggest amount of information that comes into our body every day in terms of our health. We can eat things that create inflammation, or we can eat things that create health. Every time we open our mouth and stick our fork in, we can make that choice. Is it going to be something that makes us feel good, or is it something that's going to make us feel icky or inflamed? So food is a big source of information. If we've spent most of our life eating processed foods or junk foods, and maybe we just didn't know better, so no fault of our own, but if that's the way that your life has been, then that's going to set up a set of stressors and inflammation in your body that creates problems for your genetics. So all of our stressors, eat, drink, move, right? Do you exercise or do you not? Do you create those good endorphins or do you not? Eat, drink, move, sleep. Got to have 6 minimum hours of sleep just to create normal hormone balance. For our monthly cycles, ladies, you have to have 6 hours of sleep straight through, no interruptions, without fail. Or you're going to start down the road to adrenal and thyroid fatigue. Okay? So eat, drink, move, sleep, think. Think is a big piece. Think and feel. What goes on in our heads? Some days we probably wouldn't want anyone to listen to. How many of you would actually be a friend to that person that's in your head, right? A lot of times we don't talk to ourselves very nicely. And so part of having stress in your life is how do you speak to yourself every day, and how do you love yourself every day? And that's going to be part of the healing process too. So what stressors are in our life that cause disruption in our body, that cause disruption in our DNA, that cause disruption and inflammation blooms? This is how we get leaky gut. This is a huge piece of how we get sick. Lots of people have heard of leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability. That's how it shows up in the literature. Impaired or increased permeability, intestinal permeability. There's about 1,400 or 1,500 articles now out there on PubMed about leaky gut and intestinal permeability. So this is a big deal, and even though your medical doctor has never heard of it, he's not reading the journals. It exists, it's well studied, we know what causes it, and we know a lot about how it works. So I'm going to break down leaky gut for a few minutes and help you understand how you end up with chronic disease, whether it's Hashimoto's, whether it's lupus, whether it's I feel like crap, I have no energy, my hair is falling out, my skin is terrible, my periods are awful and always have been. Any of that stuff is related to the stressors in our life and starts, guess where? Right here in our leaky gut. Leaky gut begins when all of those stressors come together and start to break down the lining of the intestine. When that lining breaks down, this is pretty simple. When the lining breaks down, it becomes, I tell my patient, it becomes like a soaker hose. If you don't know what a soaker hose is because you're not a gardener, imagine a soft, squishy tube with little teeny weeny little holes in it, right? So that water can just soak out into the ground. So your intestines become a soaker hose. This is not what we want. We want the food and the poop, right, to stay in there and go out the way it's supposed to. We don't want any of that stuff leaking into our system except through cells the way it's supposed to go. Through the cell, not between the cells. Does that make sense, right? Through the cell, not between the cells. So when we have lots of stress in our body, those cellular junctions break open and things can get through there that don't belong. Now, wrapped around your entire intestinal system is your immune system, which makes sense. You eat stuff that came off the ground, hopefully, right? You're eating vegetables. I don't care how many times you wash it, there's still going to be bacteria on there, whether you want to think about that or not. There is. And so to have our immune system in our throat, called tonsils, right, all the way down our esophagus and all the way through our belly makes sense. We want the immune system there to jump on things that don't belong inside our body. The problem comes is when that soaker hose happens, it's overwhelming to the immune system. And it starts reacting to everything that comes through the soaker hose. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So when our immune system starts reacting to everything, we start to feel crappy. We start to have, for some of us, we end up with irritable bowel syndrome. where you never know whether you are going to have constipation or diarrhea in any given day. You can end up with rashes and hives and acne. You can end up with horrible periods because your hormone system also is right up against your immune system. Whatever happens in your immune system happens in your hormone system. So hopefully, once that all starts happening, your body is letting you know this is not a good thing. And this is the time when your medical doctor cannot help you any longer. There aren't any drugs for irritable bowel syndrome. I think there might be one. They keep bringing them out, but then they take them off the market just about as fast as they bring them out. So I think there was one released recently, but the jury's still out whether that's going to be helpful or not. What I can tell you is that with 25 years of experience, we can heal a leaky gut. There's several things that go into healing that leaky gut. So here's some solutions. If you haven't done a long course of L-glutamine at least 5 grams, 5,000 milligrams, you haven't begun to heal your gut. Collagen protein, bone broth, high doses of high-potency turmeric or curcumin. Those are all great places to start. If you haven't taken a probiotic, take one that's very, very high. We use one that has 225 billion organisms for 2 weeks. Huge, huge influx of organisms. And most people do really well with it just to get started. It's only 2 weeks. But gut healing takes 2 to 4 months. 2 to 4 months. This is not for the faint of heart. And during that time, this is the part you're not going to like, gluten-free, dairy-free, mostly sugar-free except for whatever is, contained in something. Sugar-free meaning not 40 grams of sugar in something. 8 to 10 is doable. We're eating small meals several times a day to keep our blood sugar even because that keeps the stress down so that we're not continuing to create leaky gut. But it takes a lot of time, and I think that's probably where I see a lot of patients who know a lot, like you ladies know a lot. And I think what happens is you get discouraged in 2 to 4 weeks because it's not feeling better yet. And it's just not enough time. I think one of the things that I'm gonna do this little rabbit trail on time. Back in the 1800s, think about this. Back in the 1800s, women were in bed for a week every month with their periods. We do not treat our bodies like this anymore. We get up in the morning, we get kids off to school, we get ready to go to work. Everything has to happen right now, right now, right now, right now. We even get mad when our texts aren't responded to within minutes. Our bodies are not designed to handle that kind and that level of ongoing stress. And if you continue that, the healing process takes longer. That's why the think piece is so important. Getting our heads wrapped around loving ourselves and taking time to heal ourselves. I know, I can hear all of you ladies in the back of my head right now, but I don't have time to do that. And when you're really sick, you will find time. And that's okay. Everybody has to take their own journey in their own time frame when they decide that it's time to take that journey. I used to tell patients that that's okay, don't worry about it. You will have time after your first heart attack. Or you will have time after you can't get out of bed anymore. You will find time for that. And if you can take it before it gets that bad, it will be a shorter healing journey for you. That's all I can tell you. So how do we end up with Hashimoto's, or how do we end up with any autoimmune disorder? We talked about leaky gut. Left unchecked, depending on your DNA, depending on the way your genetics are set up, all of that inflammation that's happening in your leaky gut and in your belly wash over your genetics over time. When that happens, it flips little switches along the way, and genes are expressed in a way that create some autoantibodies. Not only that, certain foods also turn our immune system on and look similar to the thyroid cell. Gluten is one of those things. I know, nobody wants to hear it. But gluten is one of those foods that has a protein on it that is shaped very similar to the thyroid cell. So I think I'm going to grab my whiteboard here, because this is usually picture time in my office. And just so you understand a little bit about how we end up with autoimmune disorders. I don't know how this is going to work, but we'll see. How we end up with autoimmune disorders and how we end up with big immune system issues. I'm gonna take some liberties here and make this like very simple. So our thyroid gland, right? We're gonna make it our little H-shaped gland. You see that? Sort of. Try and getting a little bit less glare here. You should see my living room. I have like lights and camera action. It's really kind of fun. Let me move this over. Get it out of the glare. And move my camera. Okay, so we have this H-shaped gland. Let's say the cells in our H-shaped gland look like this, right? This is the shape of a thyroid cell. This is just an example, right? So when our immune system sees that, because it's on fire and because it has kind of gone crazy, it is making antibodies that look like this, like little triangles, right? When an antibody comes in contact with one of those cells, the cells blow up, basically. Okay, again, I'm making this super, super simple. So, let's take our gluten molecule. Gluten looks like this, right? You can see that it has a similar shape to the thyroid molecule, or the thyroid cell, right? It has a similar protein on it that creates that little triangle. So when we eat gluten and have these autoantibodies already in our body, the body goes, oh look, more thyroid, awesome. Let's make some more antibodies, because we think that that thyroid gland should be gone. We think it's really not part of our body. So when we eat gluten, this little triangle fits right in here. Kind of blows up the gluten, but we're more concerned about the attack all of these little dudes have on our thyroid gland. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So the more gluten you eat, the more antibodies you have. When we stop eating gluten, it takes about 3 weeks to get rid of half of the antibodies, right? So that's called a half-life. So if we have, I'm going to make another couple rows here just to make math easier. I'm not a math fan. I'm a science fan. When we do without gluten for a couple weeks, we wipe out this bottom row, right? But we still have a lot of antibodies. 3 more weeks, we get rid of another half. But 3 more weeks, how many weeks are we at, right? It takes up to 6 months to really get rid of all those antibodies from our systems. So going gluten-free is a great idea, but going gluten-free for a week doesn't do much. May help, may not. Taking the time that it takes our bodies to heal, because that's what we were really talking about, taking the time to go gluten-free and really go gluten-free is really one of the biggest and best things that you can do for your thyroid. Somebody just said that they've lost a lot of weight doing that. And yep, some people do lose a lot of weight, but you can still eat potatoes. You can still eat any starchy vegetable, and usually the starchy vegetables will help you gain that back, because that's what you're missing, is just a lot of calories there. A good nutrition coach who knows functional medicine, a good nutrition coach, period, should be able to help you with that. There's a lot of really good paleo out there. There's a lot of good gluten-free resources out there. So let's see, we've talked about basic thyroid function. We've talked a little bit about Hashimoto's and why gluten-free is important. The other thing I think that I see a lot about on the board is, why is my Hashimoto's hyper and hypo? Sometimes it's this way and sometimes it's that way. And why are my labs all over the place? The first thing you need to know about TSH is, do I have any recipes? Yeah, I have recipes. In fact, there's some posted under the files section in our group right here. The first thing that you need to know, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, about TSH. The first thing you need to know about TSH is TSH goes up and down with your stress level. So during your day, just your normal day, your TSH can go up and down. Yeah, I'll talk about eyes in a little bit, probably near the end. Because yes, Hashimoto's and thyroid can affect eyesight, and some of that may be due to pituitary issue. But TSH goes up and down through your day anyway. It's part of what your body needs, right? If you need more T4 because you're going to go run a marathon, or you're just running late to pick up your kids, or running late to work, or the dog just crapped everywhere, you may really need more T4. So your TSH goes up. It doesn't mean that you're hypothyroid. Your TSH, your pituitary gland inside your head, is doing its job. So that's part of the roller coaster that you see. The other part is, if you have Hashimoto's and you are hypothyroid, which they can be mutually exclusive, or they can be together, right? If you have Hashimoto's and hypothyroid, you have to understand that the more antibodies you have attacking your thyroid gland, the more destruction is going to happen. And I'm not just saying that to be gross or to scare you or any of that. It's just a fact, right? They're like, the antibodies are just like little Pac-Man. Best number for TSH is someplace around 2, plus or minus a little bit. That's the functional medicine numbers. Definitely less than 3, and greater than 1. So that's a little bit bigger range, but that's probably where I put it. So the more destruction that you have from your Hashimoto's, those little cells, every time they blow up, right, what do they release? They release T4, which goes into your body and may be getting converted to T3, which needs to be in every single cell. We said that at the beginning. Needs to be in every single cell of the body, but If you get a bunch released all in one day, what are you going to feel like? Buzzy and hyper and can't sleep, and maybe your stomach is rolling, and all of those things, right? All of that stuff is what's happening, and it feels like you're hyperthyroid. So, sorry, my dogs are just also excited about me doing this. So, that's what creates some of that rock and roll that Hashimoto's patients have, is just that some days you may be having a little bit more destruction in your thyroid than other days. You can't always control that, except for this gluten-free thing is a big deal, and stress management. That's why I said, look at your life. Slow down your life. It's a big deal. I think I've shared with Shauna that I'm getting ready to move my office. I had a huge chiropractic clinic. I had 2 chiropractors. I had 5 massage therapists working for me. I had 5 full-time people, a couple of nutrition coaches, and guess what? It didn't feel good anymore. I had problems with anxiety. I had problems with brain fog. I couldn't keep my kids' schedules straight. I only have 2 kids. Can't be that hard. My life just did not feel very good. And I'm sitting with patients every day for the last year telling people, slow your life down. Maybe you need to slow your life down. So guess what? I slowed my life down. I sold my chiropractic, well, I didn't sell it. I closed it. I closed my chiropractic clinic. I'm closing that particular office in a week and opening a tiny little office with me and my health coaches and a couple of my really tight staff, and I've slowed my life down. I've exhaled, right? Because sometimes what we think people want from us is not what people want from us. It's just what we think they want. It may not have anything to do with what really they want from us. So that's a place that you have to go inside of yourself. And I don't do surfacey stuff. My practice is all about let's get in and get messy and get deep and what's going on in your world. And we can stay surfacey, but we're not going to get really down into that root cause like we really want to, right? So it's just that eat, drink, move, sleep, and think, that think and feel piece that we all have to look at as women, and in our busy lives, we all have to look at that. So that being said, let's see, we've talked about Hashimoto's, we've talked about the ups and downs of Hashimoto's, we've talked about resources. Isabella Wentz's book is fabulous. I think that that's probably one of the easier books that I've seen out there to read. I know there's Stop That Thyroid Madness stuff. Some of that is good. Some of it's not scientific as much as I would like it to be. Where am I? I'm in my living room in Chicago. Well, Chicago suburbs. So I lean into science pretty heavily. I do alternative. I've done alternative for 25 years. I've done functional medicine almost since its inception. I learned about functional medicine when I was in chiropractic school 28 years ago, and used it on myself. I had horrible PMS, and I had always had horrible PMS, and I had to figure out how to make that go away in a natural way, because I just couldn't embrace anything else, and I really didn't feel like being on the pill for the rest of my life, and I didn't think it was healthy. So luckily I was able to do that. I've been in the alternative world since I was 19. My mom saw a chiropractor. She's 86. My mom saw a chiropractor when she was 20. So I come out of a long time of being in this functional alternative world where medical doctors, when I was 8 years old, completely turned me off. They told me that I would weigh 300 pounds by the time I was 19 if I continued eating the way I eat. And I had gone in with strep throat that day. So as an 8-year-old, I was already like scared to death that I was going to be super heavy and I was always going to be fat. Here's the thing, I wasn't. I danced 4 nights a week and I swam every single day. I was as solid as a rock, and I was 8. So I wasn't even close to in my own, not even a prepubescent body yet. So it's really my mission to make sure that you are heard and that your questions get answered. And that's why I really became a resource to this group, because I could just see, oh my gosh, these ladies don't know what they can do for themselves. I see that you, let's see, I also have nodules. Thank you for the information. Oh, I'm glad you guys are liking this. So eating plan. Let's talk for the next 10, 15 minutes or so about what to do about all of this. Once I'm going to answer this quick question about thyroid disease and PCOS. Actually, I'm going to answer it in a much more global sense. When you have one chronic disease, it's usually created out of other chronic diseases. And frankly, most of it can be traced back to the gut. It's almost a joke in my office, and I don't know if you all have seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but in there's a character that says, you know, I can trace every word that you have back to Greece. And so I can pretty much trace every single disorder back to the gut. Given a few minutes, I could even draw it out for you. So understand that most of the disorders that you have in conjunction with your thyroid disorder are just part of the problem. What do I see most with thyroid? Iron deficiency anemias that are completely missed. If your hemoglobin, Hg, you can see it on there, HGB, if your hemoglobin is less than 13 or 13.2 or 3, you may be iron deficient. But without iron and IBC and a couple of other, and saturation tests, you can't know. There's no way to know for sure. B12 is usually involved. If your MCV on your CBC is greater than 90 or 92, you're probably B12 deficient. Those are such common deficiencies, I could almost just blanket prescribe everybody. Vitamin D, almost always deficient. B12, B complex vitamins, really, I don't like just doing one. B complex vitamins, and iron. So, Sonia, if your D is at 9, you need to be on a lot of vitamin D. A lot. 2,000 isn't going to cut it. Not even close. You're going to need to be on 10,000 or 50,000 a week for a while, plus 10,000. I have patients on massive amounts of vitamin D, and they're fine. The toxicity level for vitamin D is really around 300, between 150 and 300. Laboratory cuts you off at 100. So toxicity is far, far, far and away. I haven't seen it yet. Low neutrophils, yep, I see low lymphs and low neutrophils. I see high neutrophils. I see lots of stuff going on with white blood cells. It all goes back to your immune system. Zinc deficiencies are also really common, and zinc is necessary for that T3 conversion, that T4 to T3 conversion. So, link between Hashimoto's and Candida, that goes back to the gut. If a bad gut has Candida growing in it, your immune system is already on fire. And that can create a lot of autoantibodies. And it can be called Hashimoto's for another person that ends up as lupus, for another person that ends up as rheumatoid, or it gets this mixed connective tissue disorder where the ANA is positive. So let's talk about what we can do for all of these disorders, right? If the issue is your immune system, as it is in Hashimoto's, Hashimoto's is not necessarily just a thyroid problem, and it's not a TSH problem. It's an immune system problem. It's your immune system making antibodies. That's where the problem lies. So you have to treat your immune system nice. Gluten-free, dairy-free. So what do we eat? That's the most common question. I just saw a thing about Whole30. Yes, enlarged thyroids can go down given the right ingredients. I've seen it happen. It's all about how you treat your body. So let's turn down the inflammation. The number one thing that you can do to turn down your inflammation, besides the gluten-free thing, is to keep your blood sugar even. Do not ever go more than 4 hours without eating some protein. Ever. Never, ever. Never, ever, never. I know that there's some things out there that say intermittent fasting for weight loss, for shifting all this stuff, but in the beginning, when we're trying to heal, we don't need any more stressors in our system. What do we eat? I have posted a couple of diets up under the files section in this group. One of them is my basic thing that's called Eat for Energy. And it's just a place to start. It's not the end all or the be all of everything, but it's a place to start. And it's a couple of eggs, it's some vegetables in the morning. If you work out in the morning because it's part of your routine, you may need to add part of a sweet potato in the morning. I have to eat most of my calories for the day before about 3 o'clock. That's the way I feel the best. I can go home and just eat salad for dinner and I'm totally happy. But I eat my biggest meals at breakfast and lunch, and then I go super light in the evening. It's how I feel good. But I also do this all day. My brain needs that kind of feeding so that I can do this kind of work all day long and keep my brain in it. So a couple eggs or some turkey sausage. If you're vegetarian, it makes it harder because we're gluten-free and dairy-free, but if you're pescatarian, you can also go for smoked salmon. My vegetarian friends are using some nuts. Nuts and nut butters tend to be their protein sources. So those kind of things you have to create like an apple and some peanut butter and some nuts, right? That's a breakfast. Your snacks can also look like that. Your snacks can be part of an apple and some kind of nut butter, just to keep it easy. You don't have to go crazy at first. Just start something simple. Your lunch can be leftovers, some kind of protein, some vegetables, and a piece of sweet potato, not a sweet potato, right? Maybe a little rice. I don't know. Rice kicks me off. Grains kick me off, so I don't bother too much with grains at all. It's not worth it. I don't feel good, and it's not worth feeling crappy ever. Life's too short to feel crappy. Dinner, afternoon snacks, how about some guacamole? Who doesn't love guacamole, right? Put it on some red pepper strips. It's pretty yummy as a dip for raw vegetables. So some carrots, or I know, seems like carrots and guacamole seems kind of weird, but tastes pretty good. I do like red peppers the best. Hummus is also a nice snack and has some nice protein and a little bit of fat. Dinner, same thing, right? Protein, veg. I'm not limiting you to broccoli and chicken or fish. All right? There is no limit there. Bison, lamb, if you're meat eaters, if you're carnivores, don't limit yourself to chicken. We hardly eat chicken in our house. I got sick of it back in the 80s. I don't like it too much, so I am a carnivore. I think in order to do weight control, vegetarianism is very, very challenging to get in the amount of protein and keep your blood sugar even without going crazy on carbs. But it can be done. It can totally be done. And you'll have to use some protein, like pea and rice protein shakes or pea protein, and use protein shakes, and make sure that you're not eating the high glycemic fruits. So what are high glycemic fruits? Grapes and bananas. Those are the things that you want to stay away from. The Whole30, can't have most things, not sure I could do it. The Whole30 works really well. I've seen patients come in after that, and it's interesting to me that they do the Whole30 and then they come in about 3 or 4 months later and go, yeah, about 3 or 4 months ago I did the Whole30. I felt fabulous. There's your clue. You felt fabulous doing the Whole30. So that's the way you need to be eating. The Whole30 is just work. You know what? It's just planning. It's just looking at your 30 days and excuse me, and creating a plan for what you need, and for what your body is going to need and what your life is going to need during that time. So blood sugar maintenance is the best thing that you can do for your energy, for your brain, and for your body. Weight loss is not going to happen in the beginning. Some people it does, and they're lucky. But more often than not, I don't see a lot of weight loss happening. Some people lose 5 to 10 pounds when they go gluten-free. But don't get discouraged. When your body is trying to heal, it is not going to release weight. Your body is trying to heal. It's under attack. It has no reason to release any weight. It's just trying to survive. So give yourself a break. Have a little grace and give yourself a break just for a little while, even if it's just the next 6 months. Give yourself some grace. So blood sugar maintenance and gluten-free are the two big things that Isabella Wentz says make the biggest difference for most Hashimoto's and thyroid patients. So those are the two things that I want to leave you with in terms of diet. Like I said, I put something called Renew. It's got recipes. It's got 7 days all laid out, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. It's got shopping lists. It's got check mark things that you can check things off. So, and then there's an instruction sheet that's on there as well. Probiotics, if you have Candida. I usually start with something a little bit different than a probiotic with Candida. Usually probiotics are not designed, probiotics are not the only thing that you need to chase away a Candida infection. You either need a prescription for nystatin for a long period of time and or some pretty strong herbal formulas that can be used like grapefruit seed extract, but in high doses, not the way the bottle says, to get rid of Candida. And again, Candida, using herbal remedies takes about 90 days. The Candida diet is almost impossible to follow, but if you stay fairly low in your starchy vegetables, it's almost the same. And then low glycemic fruits like apples, berries, pears, you know, almost no fruit with the Candida thing. Let me see. How do you make your eyes feel better and not blurry? Hydration is probably a part of that key. And then make sure, I mean, I'm sure you've had your eyes checked to make sure that it's not just the need for glasses that I know that I was in denial about for a really long time. But at 53, it was time. So I did that. Oh, thank you. I'm glad I inspired somebody. My license plate says, I spark you. And I feel like that's what God put me on the planet to do, is to spark and motivate people to move in some different direction in their life. That's, to me, that's what we're here for, is to go into the next thing. When we feel stuck, we just need to change what we're doing every day. And sometimes stuckness is changing the side of the bed that you sleep on, changing the way you go to work, changing what you eat, changing how you plan, change how you look at the 24 hours that you're using every day, because we all have 24 and we can put in whatever we want in those 24 hours a day. And it can be about your health, it can be about your kids, it can be about your husband, it can be about you. And creating time for yourself so that you can enjoy life. Life is so short, and we all hear that, and it's very cliche, but you know that kids grow fast, you grew fast. If you're young and you're 20 and you're having all these health issues, you have a long road ahead of you. Get it under control now so that you can enjoy your life. I've had more teenagers in my practice over the last year than I've ever had. Younger and younger, sicker and sicker. And being able to teach them young and early has really inspired me to help change my life and change the way I'm teaching my kids, and now hopefully inspiring all of you. So thank you, and thank you for all of your comments. You are all lovely and wonderful ladies, and I'll be around to help. Like I said, I put up a bunch of resources, so they're all sitting right there. And I will try to get to your questions. You can always private message me. I'm doing my best to get to everybody's private messages, but it's a lot and it's hard sometimes. And I do this for a living. I do have a website. There are things for sale on there, and I'm trying not to sell because I know Shannon doesn't want anything, promoted, but this is my living. It is what I do. So I'm here to help you. So thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry. There's only a few of you out there. So thanks, y'all. Have a great evening.